Welcome back to APAICS Energy Summit. I'm Madalene Mielke, President and CEO of APAICS. Our second panel is entitled Opportunities in Energy, Jobs, and Supplier Diversity. Investing in local and regional energy ecosystems will be critical to advancing sustainability. This investment also provides an opportunity to advance social and economic priorities for diversity and inclusion. It is estimated that nearly 50% of job opportunities in the energy sector through 2040 will be filled by persons of color. This panel will focus on strategies that enable diverse and underserved communities to find opportunities in the energy transition. I'm thrilled to introduce our next speaker, Congressman Jimmy Gomez. Congressman Gomez proudly represents California's 34th Congressional District, one of the most diverse and culturally rich districts in the country. In the 117th Congress, he serves as Vice Chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, sits on the House Committee on Ways and Means, and serves as an Assistant Whip for the House Democratic Caucus. Congressman Gomez is also a member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and Future Forum. Prior to his election to Congress in June of 2017, Congressman Gomez served 4.5 years in the California State Assembly, where he served as chair of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. Let's welcome Congressman Gomez.
Hi, I'm Congressman Jimmy Gomez, and I represent the 34th Congressional District in the heart of Los Angeles. Equity is at the center of everything I do. That is why I supported the Inflation Reduction Act, because it is the largest investment in combating climate change and transitioning to a green economy in the history of our nation. And one of the bills that I championed that was included in the Inflation Reduction Act is the Affordable EVs for Working Families Act, which includes $4,000 tax credit for any working family that wants to buy a used electric vehicle or a used hybrid vehicle. This bill will make EVs and hybrids more accessible for more people. And this is what we need to do, because the transition to the green economy cannot be limited by your zip code or your income. Everybody must participate. So I will keep fighting to make sure that this transition is equitable and we narrow the green divide that exists in our country.
We're honored today to have with us an esteemed group of individuals who represent government, other organizations in our nonprofit advocacy community, as well as corporate stakeholders. So please welcome to the panel, Christine Harada, Executive Director of the Federal Permitting Improvement Steering Council. In the Biden-Harris administration, presidential appointee Christine Harada serves as the executive director of the Permitting Council. As executive director, Ms. Harada assists Permitting Council member agencies in managing a portfolio of nearly $100 billion in large-scale infrastructure projects, most of which are renewable energy, coastal restoration, and electricity transmission projects. She assists federal agencies in developing and implementing comprehensive project-specific timetables for all required infrastructure permitting reviews and authorizations for Fast 41 covered infrastructure projects, advancing the administration's infrastructure agenda to rebuild the economy. Next on our panel is Dr. Karen Eng, board chair of National ACE. Dr. Karen Eng is the president and CEO of CSMI, an engineering firm. Initially a successful optometrist with a doctorate from the New England College of Optometry, Dr. Eng was committed to taking the CSMI to the next level and expand it on a global scale. Her close work with the Food Drug Administration, MBDA, the International Trade Administration, and the Export-Import Bank of the United States has led CSMI to be one of the top engineering consulting service firms in both domestic and foreign markets. Dr. Eng is a member of several prominent boards, including board chair of the National Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship, ACE. Please also welcome John Larson of Dominion Energy. John joined Dominion Energy in 1996 and is currently the Director of Public Policy and Economic Development. During John's career at the company, he has held various leadership positions in business development, alternative energy technologies, and construction. He is well-versed in offshore wind through his experience in the development and early permitting activities for coastal Virginia offshore wind pilot project. Currently, a large part of his time is spent on Dominion Energy's business-to-business, workforce development, and community outreach activity, for as the company moves forward implementing the requirements of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, including the 16,100 MW of solar, 5,200 MW of offshore wind, and 2,700 MW of storage, with the objective of maximizing opportunities for Virginia's vendors, subcontractors, and suppliers. So please give a warm welcome to our panelists today. So let's get started. So I'll start first with Dr. Eng. Can you describe what your organization is doing around job and supplier opportunities in energy, and how does it impact the AA and NHPI community?
Yes, the National ACE has started focusing on energy in the last year. We talked about it in our 2022 policy agenda, and we'll continue to talk about it in the 2023 policy agenda. Since 2015, the number of AAPIs working in the solar industry has grown by at least 18%. And a survey from last year conducted by our friends at API Vote found that 80% of AAPIs consider the environment to be an extremely or very important political issue. And 77% support stronger federal legislation to address the climate crisis. We also know that marginalized communities and poor communities are more exposed to climate risks, such as air pollution, lack of clean water, and food insecurity and access to healthy foods. And lastly, we'll just talk a little bit about how National ACE continues to advocate for sustainable energy policies and expanding job and supplier opportunities in energy through our advocacy for supplier diversity and fairness in federal contracting.
Thanks so much for sharing. Christine, can you answer the same two questions in regards to your role over in the administration?
Absolutely. One of the main components of my job is to help our council agencies acquire the infrastructure permitting expertise that they need in order to be able to deliver on this administration's once-in-a-generation infrastructure goals. And there's certain job titles that immediately come to mind when you think of infrastructure, top one probably being engineers, but there are a plethora of jobs available in this space, and the Biden administration is hiring. From accountants to economists to communications experts, biologists, botanists, archaeologists, there's a wide range of career paths that are needed to ensure that we achieve our infrastructure goals. Making sure that our federal workforce is as diverse as the country that we serve is a super high priority for us. And that's why the president signed an executive order in June of 2021, establishing a government-wide initiative to promote diversity and inclusion in the federal workforce and the development of a government-wide DEIA strategic plan that includes diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. These moves are not just political talk, they're very much at the core of the work that we do in the Biden administration and most certainly here at the Permitting Council. My office also recently established a blanket order agreement with GSA in order to help our member agencies get that infrastructure permitting support that they need from the contracting community. And this is yet another way for all communities, including the AA and HPI community, to access those job opportunities related to infrastructure permitting. There are special opportunities for minority-owned contracting businesses interested in doing work with the federal government, and it is yet another avenue for diverse communities to make sure they have a seat at the table. And last but not least, it is certainly important for us to remember all of the surrounding or support jobs that are related to infrastructure. You may not think that the restaurant owner in the community where the infrastructure project is taking place has a role in an infrastructure world, but they absolutely do, and it's an important one. Those projects cannot become a reality without the men and women who support our infrastructure workers, and as we know, there are many small business owners in our community. And it's important to my office and the entire administration that we support those support workers, because without them, these projects would never get to completion.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. And John, we'll go to you next in regards to the same two questions and from your perspective as a corporate entity.
Yeah, thanks a lot. There are just tremendous opportunities as we move forward and grow and work with diverse suppliers and diverse communities. So to start with, to reinforce the importance of that, at Dominion Energy, every single employee has a diversity, equity, and inclusion goal. And that's tied around for leaders, teaching and sharing about working with diverse communities and also for individual contributors participating in those sessions. And that's recorded, and it's a pretty meaningful part of the company's mission, therefore a meaningful part of each person's annual incentive goal plan. But then we take that and go beyond. And as another part of that goal, we really focus on growing our diverse suppliers. And this year we topped $1 billion, which is pretty significant advancement for Dominion Energy. And we're working towards reaching 20% of our total spend as far as that goes. And that's tracked and reported and also included in that. So in our everyday lives, it's just part of our culture and how we think. And that's the important thing. You can have a lot of programs, but it has to become ingrained in your culture. Talk a little bit about a couple of specific items. Number one is annually we have what's called a Convergence Conference, and that's where we invite diverse suppliers to join and come, and it's an all-day event with opening remarks by our chairman, and then different rooms you can visit through the day to understand opportunities and how to work with different business units within the corporation. I'll move a little bit towards offshore wind, which is a project I have a lot of responsibility for supply chain development and workforce development. The Virginia Clean Economy Act that enabled the offshore wind project and provided the necessary support that the company needed to go forward includes some requirements on priority hiring and working with diverse suppliers. So we are actively out working in our communities, and it comes down to meeting with community members, sharing about opportunities and how to do business with Dominion, as well as also working to attract those workers. And by engaging with diverse companies, you tend to also increase the number of diverse workers working on your project. So a lot of activities all the way from the highest level down to the frontline day-to-day work.
Thank you so much for sharing your individual perspectives on this work. Let's do a little bit of forecasting. So what do you think are the opportunities or future possibilities that our communities should be excited about? And I'll start with John.
Yeah, this is a very exciting time. I've worked at Dominion Energy for 26 years now, and it's probably the most exciting time I've ever seen. And the reason for that is it's a transformational period. Our society is moving from the traditional generation portfolio using nuclear, coal, natural gas, and hydro to provide the power and reliability that we've all enjoyed for decades. And now we're transitioning to solar, storage, onshore, offshore wind. There's still nuclear there, and eventually new technologies such as hydrogen that may be coming about. And the number of hydrogen hubs that are being proposed right now, seeking federal funding to support, are just phenomenal. Our company itself is moving forward with 2 proposals in different regions since we operate in 16 states. But the jobs that are going to come with that, now we need offshore wind technicians. We need solar technicians. We need technicians that can operate battery storage. And the thing that most people tend to forget about is the entire distribution and transmission grid has to be upgraded so that we can take power from multiple directions and provide it to homes and businesses so that you have that same reliability. So now, instead of just individuals that may be installing towers and distribution poles and wire, now we have advanced equipment there that has to be maintained with technicians. So really, if you start thinking about our community colleges, just about any type of program that they offer related to many trades, as well as professionals with engineering and environmental science degrees, just wide open for those opportunities as we go forward. And getting out and talking about those jobs is extremely, extremely critical. I'll use offshore wind as a quick example. If my kids would have come up 10 years ago and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to go into offshore wind," I would say, "Have you lost your mind? What are you talking about? There's no business for offshore wind in the United States a decade ago." Well, today, that's not the case. So we go out and we meet with students, We also look for unique, non-traditional communication and meeting opportunities, basketball tournaments, sports tournaments, so that we can talk not just to the kids, but also to the parents. So when they sit down around that kitchen table, then they can actually have that conversation and dialogue, and the parents don't think that the kids have lost their mind when they say when they want to go into a new type of work or a new line of work. So getting out and having that outreach is important to get that awareness, interest, and then drive that engagement so we can be successful.
There's a whole new world of job opportunities out there. Karen, what about you?
Our communities are excited about the allocations provided in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So the Department of Transportation and the Department of Energy are two of the biggest beneficiaries of this funding. So we know that there are massive opportunities for revamping our country's infrastructure in a historic, efficient, and clean way. We're also excited about the CHIPS and Science Act. This is a generational investment in science and research. It invests in U.S. chip making ability to strengthen supply chains and boost the clean energy industry. And lastly, the Inflation Reduction Act also makes historic investments in sustainable practices such as EVs. So $370 billion in clean energy investments that will create jobs, reduce costs for families, and improve overall quality of life. So this funding will be allocated to state and local governments for these initiatives. And so it's important that AAPIs are on the radar screen for opportunities that can come from these investments. AAPI should be included at the table when these investment policies and decisions are being made with this funding and included in the opportunities associated with the policy.
Thanks, Karen. And Christine, what's your forecast?
Well, I am absolutely with John and Karen on this one. There's so much to be excited about these days. Since President Biden took office, we've created 10 million jobs. And of those jobs, 700,000 were in manufacturing, which created opportunities for Americans across the nation, including those in the AA and HPI community. A record 5.5 million new businesses were started in 2021, of course, many of them led by minority entrepreneurs. And these results are part of an ongoing work for the administration, and it'll just grow from here. The administration works every day to make sure that the work we're doing is done in an inclusive manner, and we've enshrined equity into all of our actions. I think the A and HPI community should be excited about the vast opportunities that will and are already coming out of the historic legislations passed over the last year and a half, as referenced by both Karen and John, from the American Rescue Plan to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, to the Inflation Reduction Act. The administration has brought legislation to the finish line that will not only improve our environmental future and economy, but that will create good-paying union jobs far into the future. My late father was a union worker, and I know well how unions can help ensure that all communities, including those of color, get a fair shake when it comes to career stability. President Biden, as you know, has made getting union workers included in that infrastructure decade a priority, and that will mean better paying jobs with better benefits for a generation of workers to come. And encouraging union work is part of the conversations that my team has been having with project sponsors throughout the permitting process and working to show them how integral this component is to building a better America.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. As we think about this forecast, we also know that there are opportunities, as we've mentioned earlier, but we also know that there are challenges. So we want to talk about what those challenges might be in preventing faster, more efficient development that would increase diversity in energy. So Christine, can you talk a little bit about some of those challenges that you see?
Absolutely. We definitely need to invest in teaching young people at the earliest stages of life about the vast career opportunities in the energy and infrastructure space. I think what John mentioned about the work that they're doing at Dominion is fantastic. Outside of engineers and environmental scientists, most students probably have no idea of the number of career paths that are available to them in these spaces. And it has to be a priority at every level of government to make sure that this message gets to them so that we're ready to run with the great opportunities afforded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. We already know that we don't have enough subject matter experts to get that permitting process done quickly. And so we really need to make it a priority to hone that talent early in the educational system.
Karen, as a leader in community-based work, what do you see as those challenges?
So we know the talent is there. So the task is bringing that talent to the government's implementation teams. We need to also foster AAPI leadership and overall diversity in the private and the public sectors, because having leaders that reflect the communities that have been excluded from these opportunities will, for so long, creates more possibility for meaningful inclusion and equity. So AAPI's firms need to be aware of contracting opportunities. In our surveys, we found that most AAPI entrepreneurs missed contracting and capital opportunities because they were not aware or did not think they were eligible. So we need to bring forth the awareness and also the technical assistance to help firms navigate through the paperwork. Companies are now evaluated by investors, shareholders, and the public in the areas environmental, social, and governance, as AAPIs are underrepresented in the highest ranks of corporations. Again, and on corporate boards, we need to ensure that we are included in the company's DEI strategies, both in terms of employment and procurement, diversity initiatives, and as well as the investment in our communities.
Addressing challenges can be such a moment in time, because you recognize that, the environment around you, plus, stakeholders who are willing to put in the work to share in the effort of addressing these challenges is just as important. So, each of you in your different organizations have a role in addressing these challenges and finding solutions. So, in what ways are your organizations working to address these challenges and work to find solutions? So, John, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So Dominion Energy is in somewhat of a unique perspective, being the utility that provides gas or electric service to over 7 million customers. So the communities in which we work and serve, we have a pretty intense network of individuals that work on community engagement or state and local affairs. So that gives us a great opportunity to leverage those contacts. And so we get a lot of that front line, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But from a corporate level, over the next 5 years, Dominion will spend over $50 million in support of scholarships and program development and infrastructure development, for diverse schools and diverse communities. And we've made that commitment. We started a few years ago, so we have 3 or so more years to move forward with that. And we do a tremendous amount of work in regards to that. Focusing a lot, as Christine mentioned, thinking about, it's very easy. I'm an engineer by training. It's pretty easy to find out information about large infrastructure projects, but getting into high schools and working with CTE programs, working with community colleges, sponsoring events, and really getting there and being in front of students is critical. We just did a 2-day session with individuals that were taking welding programs in the Hampton Roads area in about 6 different CTE programs. We did Win for Students, working with NEED, an organization out of Washington, D.C., which we trained 150 teachers and providing them information packets on offshore wind to share with their students. In fact, anybody can go and download that. But as I get back into that, let's get into the communities to get that outreach there, to get that awareness and interest. We do a lot of things. We'll set up grassroots community advisory boards around large projects. Again, I'll use offshore wind. We set up a board there. We knew the communities that we would be impacting included Filipino, African American, and Hispanic communities. So we had representatives as well as the Native communities. So we had representatives from all of those communities. Well, we translated our materials on offshore wind into Tagalog because of the large Filipino community in the Hampton Roads area. And that lets us be able to get out and have information and dialogue that's more easily understood about the project, about the opportunities with the project, but also helps us better understand the needs of those communities that we can bring to bear. So it's having, again, kind of that nice benefit of the corporate structure and just how we do things, but then using our network to reach out to the communities, identify community leaders to get that feedback for what we're doing. And I'll say that we work with the Asian Chamber of Commerce here in Virginia. There are 3 different regions, the Tidewater, the Richmond, and then Northern Virginia. And we work very closely with them and have done a number of seminars where we talk about major infrastructure projects we have, and again, share with how those businesses can pursue opportunities with the company and help them get engaged with our supply chain team so that they can have the ability to start working with Dominion Energy.
Thank you. Karen, with your work with ACE, I know that you do a lot, to support our small business owners and entrepreneurs. What are you doing to address these challenges?
Yes, so we continue to create forums so that we can connect the private and the public sectors. So this past year, we have an AAPI strong small business roundtable series in which we bring together small business leaders and with their elected and appointed officials. These roundtables foster discussions and relationships between the entrepreneurs and the government who are implementing energy policy, and we're trying to create the space to learn more about the contracting opportunities. And then we continue to push very hard for AAPI representation in both the private and the public sector.
And Christine, what is the administration working on?
So participating in events like this one is absolutely key to us getting the word out about opportunities that are available in the infrastructure world. For the most part, a lot of these conversations stay inside the Beltway, but obviously infrastructure projects are happening all over the country, and we absolutely need to prioritize getting the word out to all the communities, and especially those who've been historically marginalized. I'm very grateful to hear about the work that Karen's doing, as well as John's work at Dominion Energy, because having access to both local elected officials, to major corporations, is absolutely critical in terms of overcoming that language and, candidly, the cultural barrier. Something that I've got experience with as well, given the fact that my parents didn't speak English very well either growing up. And so for those of us who have grown up in households like that and have served as translators for our parents, having those kinds of events really changes the mindset for our communities.
Always having culturally competent materials and in-language access to resources are always things that make life a little bit easier for immigrant communities and for people who are marginalized. So thank you to all of you for being sure that you are addressing those challenges that our communities face. One of the things that we always talk about too is how government and private sector can come together to support one another in achieving goals. So, how do you think the government and private sector can better support these opportunities? I'll start with Karen.
The private sector usually has market and supply chain insight through their operations in a way that the public sector cannot foresee. The private sector can see what the shortages are that are likely to occur, and it's important to foster these dialogues between private and public sectors so that we can take action before there's a crisis, as we saw what happened with the baby formula. The government can also make it a priority to contract with 8A certified firms or SEDI owned companies in their energy and infrastructure projects.
John, as a member of the private sector with your company's work, what do you see are opportunities?
So I think they're pretty tremendous opportunities, and I'll start with one of the benefits of the public sector. There is tremendous funding available for men and women, whether they're just starting their careers or whether they're transitioning mid-career, to pick up new skills. I mean, you can virtually go to school today and get a new skill and get a certification or go through up to a 2-year training program at no cost to yourself, thanks to typically federal and state funding that go towards that. So I think once you have that, then where does a private company come in? So a private company then comes in by offering scholarships. to support anything that funding doesn't cover, but also working to have like diverse student conferences as Dominion Energy does. So we'll have a 3-day conference once a year in which we'll bring in hundreds of young men and women, all diverse candidates, and they are guaranteed an opportunity to interview for a position at Dominion Energy. So they're not guaranteed a job, but they're guaranteed an interview for a position here. And I think that really goes a long ways towards helping to get that and working with these internships and looking at making sure that we get out and encourage and contact so that members of diverse communities are aware of the opportunities that abound as we move forward with this energy transition that we're on.
And Christine, as a part of the public sector, how would you see opportunities to come together?
Sure. My team is in constant contact with our project sponsors. We meet with them regularly on a monthly basis, and we work together to get their projects through the often bumpy infrastructure permitting process. And making job opportunity and supplier component of those conversations certainly goes a long way in encouraging project sponsors to integrate diversity into every component of their work. Certainly grateful to companies like Dominion that clearly have been investing a lot of effort into this throughout. And this is something that is an absolutely important factor for my office in the entire administration, and ensuring that it's not just talk, that we're implementing it and that action is actually happening on the ground.
Thank you to all of our panelists today. If we are out of time, and so I just wanted to give them just one last opportunity to have any closing remarks in talking about how this work impacts our community, how energy plays a role as we look forward to the evolution of the workforce. So I'll throw this back over to John if he has any closing comments.
Yeah, thanks again for the opportunity to participate in the panel today. And it's a great discussion. And I think that we've covered a number of topics. And first is making sure that we consider how to best optimize this era that we're in of tremendous change and growth in the economy, and how to tie together those opportunities and work with diverse businesses, and how do you set that culture at a private company, whether it's directly goals that impact your compensation, but it's much more than that. It's setting the culture so that people want to get out and work in diverse communities. It's setting up employee resource groups like our Asian Pacific Islander Employee Resource Group, and bringing that all into our culture, and then those events that each one of those organizations share and host. But the biggest benefit is helping helping us further expand our knowledge and understanding of the communities. And I think that when you start looking at the business side of it, by doing that and getting out in the communities, then you're saying, oh, hey, wait a minute, I met this person at this event and they do this. So we need to talk to them about where we're trying to go. What can we do? How can we engage? And that just becomes a natural part of the process versus, okay, let's move forward with some sort of procurement activity and not being able to reach out and encourage someone to participate. So growing and having the right culture in a private company is essential to getting the advances that I think Dominion Energy has been able to realize today.
Thank you, John. Christine?
Yes, investing in the local and regional energy ecosystems is absolutely critical to ensuring that our nation is transitioning to a clean energy economy. And it's something that I've long said is very much an all hands on deck challenge. And I want to make sure that our communities certainly are aware of the opportunities, have the opportunities to be able to advance both themselves, their communities, the nation's social and economic priorities, for diversity and inclusion, that it's not just talking points, it is not just policymakers and talking heads, that these are actually translated into jobs on the ground in the energy sector or related sectors, for the next couple of decades. I've read estimates that Nearly half of all job opportunities in this sector through 2040 will be filled by people of color. And that means, for me, absolutely opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. So let's figure out how we can connect with all of our communities, with the diverse and underserved communities, to make sure that we are connecting them with opportunities in that energy transition.
And Karen, we'll have you close us out.
So exactly. I mean, it's just so obvious of what we need to do and how we need to go about doing it. So on ESG, companies need to have and be committed on to the environment and how they are going to reduce emissions and put that into their operations. Secondly, they need to be committed to diversity. By having both of those, whether it's private, public, or nonprofit, these are excellent opportunities for APIs for the next decade and generationally. So thanks.
Thank you to all of our panelists, Karen, John, and Christine. We greatly appreciate all your insight and perspectives on the work of energy and how job diversity is so important for us as we think about opportunities and looking into the future and forecasting where our communities are going in this job field. So thank you to all of you for joining us in the audience, and we look forward to seeing you on the next panel.